Hello, Assalamualaikum, and a very good day to you guys. So today, we're gonna continue our session, which is I'm gonna presenting chapter 5, which is about power, and then we could continue to the chapter 6, which is conflict. Okay, so don't waste any more time. So let's start. Chap Moving forward to chapter 5, which is international security and power. Okay, so basically, in chapter 5, we're going to discuss about uh, mainly focusing on the security itself and also power. Mainly, when we talk about power, we talk about security, it actually focusing on the realism theory. Okay, so international security, in terms of power, so we're going to touch on the concept of power. We're going to see the contemporary theory of power, power disparity, and then we're going to look at bargaining. What is the meaning of bargaining power, leverage, balance of power, and we're going to touch a bit on historical and also background level. And also, we're going to touch on alliance. Okay, so international security, meaning definitions and also explain. So basically, when we talk about security, it is about a safe place. A human need to be need to insecure. Human always feel insecure. Okay, for example, we as a human, so we always feel insecure, and then we need a safe place. All right, so that's why, in terms of security, is very important towards state. Every state going to war, because when we look at the history, when state going to war, because they wanted to become an ultimate power, they wanted to become a supreme power, and then when they become supreme or ultimate power, they will no other state that could topple them, so they will feel that they will live in peace. So basically, classical thoughts, focusing on realism perspective. When we talk about security, although classical or currently, which is modern system also, we're gonna touch when it comes about security, we will actually explain the concept of security and also define the security towards the realism perspective. Okay, so according to Hans Morgenthau, so in his book Political Nation, so he says that the most crucial aspect of international relations due to the past experience, which is the anarchy, sovereignty, and also hegemony. What is the meaning of anarchy? Anarchy means it shows that international system, okay, international system antarabangsa ni, so they don't have any law binded them. For example, if we look at the state itself, okay, dalam negara, so every state has their own law, rules, and also uh, they have their own attributes. But yet, if we look at the international arena, international system, so state can actually fully utilize, okay, the international arena for their needs. For example, if you are strong, you can become dominant in international system. If you are not strong, you cannot become dominant in IR. So that's why many scholar uh, and also thoughts will says that the national system is anarchy, right? So who has power, they can lead and they can rule the international system. And second would be the sovereignty. So sovereignty means the ultimate recognitions by other state towards the state itself. For example, Malaysian, we have sovereignty because a lot of state recognize us as a sovereign state. For example, if you don't have sovereignty state, you are not complete to become a legitimate state. For example, Israel, right? So until now, they're fighting to get the legitimate process from the international arena. Okay, so sovereignty is very important toward the state because it defines that you are sovereign state, you are legitimate state or not. The third will be the hegemony. You know, all state wanted to have power. If you are a small state, if you have the less developed state, they wanted to become dominant in international system. So hegemony is very important. So in terms of hegemony itself, you need to have power. You know, if you are big power, you know, for example, American, China, Russia, the veto's power, right? So they compete each other to become hegemony in the international system. Okay, we talk about power. So power is an enabling factor in interaction between international actor. Without power, an actor cannot bargain well or turn events in his own favor. So power is a key for the state. If you have power, say you can lead the system, lead the international system, and also you can become dominant. So it is an ability of an actor on the international state to use it in terms of tangible and or intangible resources. We will look at it. What is the uh, factors of intangible and also tangible factor in terms of resources? Okay, in such a way as to turn the outcome of international event in one favor. Okay, the concept of power. So they have to, if I'm not mistaken, yes. Uh, we back first. Okay, the concept of power. Okay, ability to get another actor to do what would not have done. Okay, which is the power of influence. So if you are small power, so you can use this tactic lah to try to approach to become dominance in IR. Okay, so the second would be the ability to influence is based on the characteristic of or professions of the state. So, for example, territorial. If you have big territorial, so you have influence in terms of territorial. So, level of income, you know. So, if you are high income nation, so you have the power of influence. You know, you can influence the international system. If you have good in terms of armed force, for example, China, you know, Russia, so you can also influence the system, the IR system, and then the population. If you are big population, so you actually create a power, okay, in terms of population. Okay, hard power, soft power. So hard power is the exercise of influence through coercions, relying on tactics like military forces, payment, and economic sanction. Okay, hard power benda yang we can nampak lah. For example, military, for example, war, you know, military intervention. Okay, for example, payment. You know, you own the United Nations, then you become dominant. Okay, so and then you can impose sanction to other state. Okay, for example, like American post sanctions on Iran. Okay, when Iran profile nuclear weapon, so they force sanction on Iran. So it includes it shows that American has a huge power, that they has a willpower to do the sanction. Okay, soft power use attraction or persuasion. This is more on modern realism, or we call it as neo-realism. So change mindset, influence behavior. So it is source include culture, political value, and also positive global engagement. Okay, you have to remember when we talk about realism, so it has two perspectives, which is classical and also modern. Okay, when we talk about classical, it is more barbarian. It's more like war is an ultimate extension of foreign policy, and then they don't have any uh, you know tools, okay, to overcome the situation, unless going to war. Okay, but nowadays, war is not, many state prohibit, they have a sense of realism, but they don't want, war is the final stage, okay, or war is an ultimate, it is not a necessary for them, so they can use a lot of things that also relate to the modern IR. For example, the persuasion, the bargaining, okay, the the engagement. Okay, for example, why nowadays small state eager to join the international organization because they wanted to become safe. For example, American, it's a unilateral, it's a superpower in IR right now. For example, like a small state like Malaysia, Brunei, even in Europe, for example, Greece, so they bound in terms of UN to create confidence measures, okay, for them, that they can live peace and harmony without deploy or without uh, rebuild their military, or gaining power in terms of going to war. Okay, for example, culture, soft power. For example, nowadays Korean, K-pop, the power of influence. So their influence all of the society, government itself, the power of ideology, and then engagement. As I said before, the powers of international organization that actually, it can use as a tool to 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 balance of power within the small state, with the high state or the big state, superpower state. Okay, power of idea, the ability to maximize the influence of capability through a psychological process. Okay, the power of idea, according to Joseph S. Nye in his book, it is a soft power. So how actually you can survive in the international arena, or for example, so you need to have a power of idea, for example, Malaysian, for example, we plan or we initiate ASEAN during the Cold War, okay, that actually benefit us, and also benefit not only us, throughout the state in the Southeast Asia, and also a lot of things can be done towards the organization itself. Okay, for example, alliance, also power of ideas. Okay, getting alliance. Okay, fungibility of power. So as we mentioned before, it is a tangible or intangible resources. So the ability of balance tangible or intangible. When we look at tangible, so it focusing on the hard power. Okay, the population. How many population you have. For example, Indonesians are much more stronger than Malaysia because of the population. And Singapore are much more uh, dominant in terms of military rather than in Malaysia or Indonesians, right? Okay, so natural resources. If you have a good natural resources, for example, Thailand, you can become dominant in economy, and for example, China are dominant in economy, as well as when you dominate in economy, you will become dominant in the terms of security. So this is what we call tangible. So intangible, so it is the things that fragile, and also some says that it ikut musim lah. Okay, it actually follows the season. For example, political support. Okay, we support a democracy allied, and then you become, you can be part of them to become dominant in the international relations. For example, the culture, the tradition. We are bound with the tradition. For example, in within the Indonesian, so we are bound them, so we can create confidence, and it can rebuild your dominance in terms of power in Asia, for example, and then patriotism, nationalism, and also education. Okay, model of the elements of state power. So in international relations, so you can just look at the chart. Okay, so natural resources of power are very popular. For example, first is the geography. We are lucky, because we have one strait that are important throughout the world. Straits of Malacca, and then that is our national resources of power. Okay, and then the natural resources, for example, palm oil, rubbers, soil, and also population. This is what we call natural resources. So natural resources of state are powers are enhanced and modified to constrain. So how actually they use natural resources to divide the tangible and also the intangible power. So tangible power, you can actually rebuild your industrial development, access to the resources, for example, like China, like Japan, so they can fully utilize and become dominant in CNIR. Then for intangible, focus on national image, you can become pride, public support, and you have a good terms of leadership. Okay, contemporary theories. Okay, these four type of power. We call it in terms of social constructivism. So the first is power over. Power over means you are dominant. You dominant, and also we call it relative power. So power over, you are dominant. You can become unilateral or unipolar in the state system. For example, nowadays, so power dominance, power over means if like say Singapore and Malaysia, okay, in terms of economy, Singapore are power over Malaysians in terms of economy. For if you look at the China-US relationship, so Singapore, China are more dominance or power over in terms of economic towards US or so like that. So structural power, so power within the state. So it is ability to actualize the object. For example, structural power ni focusing on the the friendly of the state. For example, you become dominance in your environment, then it will help you to build a confidence, and then to value in terms of uh, the resources itself. Okay, the third will be the institution power. Institution power is power within the IOs. Okay, for example, you have power within the IOs. For example, we join the OIC, Organization of Islamic Country. So we have actually institutional power within the IOs. For example, ASEAN, UN, okay, so ARF, so the ability to development personal conceptualizations and also construct on reality. Okay, the last will be the productive power, which is power of idea. So it is about ideology, idea, and also how you survive in the national system. And it is about your ability to cooperate, to tolerance, to embrace difference, and also benefit from each other. Okay, mainly power of idea. The best is the power of negotiation, or we call it diplomacy. Okay, so we in Malaysia, we have a good power of ideas. Okay, so we are good in diplomatic relations. Okay, power disparity. So power is a relative concept. So state have power in relations to other state. So between state, for example, gross national product, gross domestic product, within state, example, strength political party, number of seats, uh, voting process, and then state power is a mix of many aspects. It is intangible and also intangible. Now we move to the bargaining power. So bargaining power is the exercise of power involve two or more parties. So each trying to influence the other more than it is itself influence. So bargaining can be defined as tacit, benda yang tak nampak, or direct communication. So it is an attempt to reach agreement on an exchange of value tangible or intangible item that one or both party values. So bargaining ni mainly being used by the state, mainly the less power state. So they wanted to have something, so they bargain. Okay, so they bargain. Macam for example macam you lah, you you nak makan, you nak masuk dalam group. Okay, and then so you bargain lah. Okay, masuk dalam group, what is you can contribute to the group. Okay, and then for example, ada orang nak ajak you join dalam organisasi ni because you ni pandai ni, then you bargain. Okay, for example bargain dari sudut, okay berapa aku dapat, macam tu. And then when it come to state, okay, for example, state will look for the state that can be benefit to them or influence them. Then only they can join, or they will follow the state. So that's why bargaining process happen. No, for example, if state are in having in trouble, right? Negotiation is a bargaining process lah. Bargaining includes both direct move, explicit negotiation. So bargaining process has two or more participants and sometimes a mediator. Okay, for example, issues that happen in between Philippine and also Bangsa Moro conflict. Bangsa Moro ni is a group of ethnic in the Philippines and also in the indigenous people. So they had a lot of crisis, more than 100 years crisis between in Philippines and Malaysia, Philippines and them, which is Bangsa Boro region. So they occupied the Mindanao Island. And then the prolonged conflict had happened to Philippines has actually, create a lot of trouble towards the Southeast Asia, mainly focusing on the South China Sea, because in term they are also related towards the piracy, terrorism, and Philippines wanted to settle the conflict, and they asked Malaysian to become mediator. So as when Malaysian become mediator, so around 3 to 4 months, the case the conflict had been settled, and now the Bangsa Moro already been given autonomous to form what we call as Bangsa Moro region. Okay, so it's like that lah. And then participants bring different means of leverage to bargaining process. So leverage drive from power capabilities that allow one actor to influence the other to reach agreements more favorable to the first actor interest. Okay, next. Okay, leverage. Leverage ni mainly focusing in how actually you can impose action lah. Okay, and then other influence that you can give a good value or bad value to the state. Okay, so leverage may operate on any three dimensions of power. The first, a promise of positive sanction, which is reward. And second, the threat of negative sanction, which is it damage the value items. And the last will be an appeal to the other's feeling of love, friendship, sympathy, or respect of oneself. For example, issues that happen, we actually put on sympathize. For example, issue in Palestinian, so that one is more on the the love, friendship, and also the respect. And then the sanctions of economy within they impose towards the other state by violating the international norm. So it is the 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 power of leverage that being used by the state towards the international system. So bargaining usually take place formally, usually at the table, what back and forth dialogue called negotiation. Okay, we look at balance of power. So balance of power ni unique. So it's a dominance both or many actor in IR. So a balance of power is a state of stability between competing force. So in international relations, so it refers to equilibrium among country or alliance to prevent any one entity from become too strong and thus gaining the ability to enforce its will upon the rest. So paling senang, paling mudah for you to understand the bargaining power, you have two or many that has same balance of power in the international system. Okay, for example, World War One dominance we call it multipolar, and then World War Two we have bipolar. Okay, dominance by two superpower. Okay, so a rule to manage international system on international society. So the general concept of balance of power, one or many state process that counterbalancing coalition. So repeatedly found in history to prevent one state from conquering the entire region. Okay, so balance of power argue that such counterbalance secure regularly to stability of international system. Okay, so international system memang dah chaos lah, tidak ada undang-undang. So got a lot of state wanted to become dominant, and then post BOP balance of polar. Okay, this is and then when the another one state collapse, so you can that will new world order happens. Okay, this theory is reflect to the Cold War system. Okay, bila Cold War system antarabangsa tu chaos, and then wujudlah dua entity, Soviet Union and American, and then they get into conflict. 1991 one collapse, so one become dominance that create world order. So variance of BOP, for example, the equilibrium resulting from equal distributions of power among nations. So ada sama rata lah, equal distribution. So the second would be the equilibrium resulting for unequal distributions of power among nation state. For example, got one state dominant, another one state not dominant. So unequal distributions of power. Okay, the third will be dominant one nation state. Okay, so it resulting the dominance one nation state, so you become superpower lah, ataupun kita panggil unipolar, unilateral. Okay, and then a system providing a relative stability and peace. Okay, system provide relative stability and peace. So balance of power ni dia akan provide stability lah, right? Because they don't have the arm race keep on going, and then they don't have any direct war. Mainly, if they have balance of power, they will use a proxy war to settle the conflict. Okay, sistem categorize. So, dia akan bagi tahu adalah instability and war lah. So, the last resort it will be happen war lah, perang. So, according to Morgenthau lah, Hans Morgenthau, Politics of Nation. Okay, if balance of power fail, ada tiga faktor dia. Yang pertama, one or more great power attempt to dominate. For example, apa yang berlaku during Napoleon era, 1804, 1815, and then during the Dofita era, 34, 35 during the World War II. Okay, second, the great power dissatisfied with the international legitimacy of government of others. For example, United States versus Saddam or Muammar Gaddafi. Third, war will happen. Four prerequisites of balance of power. The first will be the multiplicity of sovereign political actor and the absence of a single centralized legitimate the strong authority over the sovereign state. Pertama. Yang kedua adalah relatively unequal distribution among the political actors that make up this system. So this permit the differentiation of state into at least third category: great power, intermediate power and small power. So dia akan kelaskan lah dalam sistem antarabangsa ni. So ada kuasa besar, intermediate power, small power. You can look this at the United Nation, kita ada veto power kan, and then the development power or a small power ataupun negara dunia ketiga. So continuous but control competition, conflict among sovereign political actor for what are perceived as scarce resources. And the last would be an implicit understanding among rulers of great power, distributions benefits them mutually. Okay. Okay, this is history of balance of power. Okay, we look at the first Europe phenomena, which is first golden age of brand power, starting 1960, 60, 84, 48, and until 1978, 87. Sorry. And second will be the second golden age of balance of power, which is 1845 until 1914. So applicability of balance of power among the ASEAN country. Okay, the first golden era. So f- focusing on characteristic of international system. So it is called a conflict resolution religious was reduced because they have 30 years of war, and then they realized that they need to stop and also conclude the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648. Only then the Western concept of nation state come into existence. Okay, absolute monarchy replaced by system of popular sovereignty. So much on that period, most of them were ruled by the king or pope, kan, padri. So being ruled and then system by popular sovereignty being implemented. So start then with French Revolution 1789 to topple the monarchy and also rule by people. War amongst nation state was kept limited corporate mentally of various aristocrats ruling the European country. So character balance of power phase one, for example, we're having French Revolution 1789, and also when we are having a revolution, it increased the expansions of military campaign. Semangat nationalism pun naik sebab negara nak wanted to setting in a new concept. Okay, creation the new world order by the Napoleon. Economy reaction, so bind together to the European reaction. So after Napoleon become dominant in after French Revolution, so most of the state bind together to defeat Napoleon. So agree to restore the principle of legitimacy and also moderation. So hasilnya Napoleon was eventually defeated at the Battle of Waterloo 1885. 1815, so agreed to Congress of Vienna to restore the European balance of power. Functions of Congress. Okay, Congress is very important. Until now, so it is a place to peacemaking process, treaty, sessions of boundaries, So it is also a management of post-war settlement, okay, and also crisis management. So we have two. Okay, a lot of Congress of Vienna, Alex Chapel, Tapau, Libach, Warna. So a lot of Congress being held to settle a lot of things, to limit the war, the use of war during that era, So other minor Congress, for example, Paris and London. So second golden age of balance of power started 1845 until 1914. So the biggest power we a lot of negara lah yang state that involved, which is England, France, Prussia, and also Austria-Hungary. So the characteristic of international system, it is focusing on ideologically homogeneous. War was kept limited also, and then international law began to flourish. Okay, challenges of BOP, second phase. So it is changing nature of the 20th century due to the technological and also industrialization. So revolutionary industrial has played a bigger role in massive production in terms of military equipment. So it also increase masses of nationalism to the people to become to wanted their state to become dominant, and then it increased imperialism, imperial armies. So Britain rules the waves. The sun will never set on British Empire. So it also increased the different interests among the ruling elites. So great powers started to concern about their sovereignty, strong strong and also national identity. So interrupted lah World War One and World War Two. So power of distributions and world political system. So ada tiga lah. Kita panggil power of distribution. Pertama we call it multipolar. So this is the multipolar concept lah. Balance of power, tapi dalam konsep multipolar ni ada lebih daripada dua negara. For example, like First World War. First World War is a multipolar. Second World War. Okay, during the Cold War, world become both we call it bipolar. We have Soviet and also US, and after that, after the Cold War, ended 1991, world become unipolar lah, or we call it hegemony, kuasa tunggal. Okay, this is multipolar, unipolar, and then the post Cold War. Okay, the unipolar. Tak, ni bipolar silap. This is bipolar. Ni bipolar lah during Cold War. Then unipolar. Nanti sekarang. Okay, alliance lah. So a coalition of state coordinate their action to accomplish some end. So kalau ada banyak konsep alliance lah. Okay, alliance kalau daripada apa ni, Sun Tzu, enemy of my enemy is my friend, friends of my enemy is my enemy. Musuh kepada musuh kawan saya adalah musuh saya, dan kawan kepada musuh saya adalah kawan saya. Macam tu. So most alliance are formalized in written treaties. Concern on common threat, a related issue on international security. For example, World War One alliance was central. World War Two Axis was allied, where the state form alliance to increase their effective power relative of other state of alliance or alliance. The world main alliance, including NATO, US, Japanese alliance, face uncertain roles in changing the world order. So definition, a close association of nation for the achievement of common objective, or a group of countries united for the purpose of joint military protection. And then the formations on an alliance, so coupled with their own military preparedness, was a mean to ensure a country's security in the years leading up to World War One. So colonial rivalries lead each country to seek friends. So example, defensive alliance for their own protection. Okay, this quote by Hannes. So when a man make alliance with an almighty, giant looks like grasshopper. So when you become alliance, you become dominant. Jadi besar lah. Macam for example NATO. Malaysian have 5 FPDA, 5 Power Defense Agreement. We also have ASEAN. So you become big lah. So an alliance with a powerful person is never safe. So alliance and international organization should be understood as opportunity for leadership and a means to expand or influence, not as constraint on our power. Okay, so that's all for the chapter 5. So let's continue to chapter 6, which is the conflict. Okay, conflict resolution. Okay, international conflict. Okay, so what is international conflict? You heard that a lot of conflict happen nowadays, you know. For example, you know, issue Israel Palestine from 1948 until now, more than 50 years, you know. Then a lot of conflict happen throughout the world right now. So why conflict occurs? Why violence and also war happen, you know? So definitions of conflict is a social process when two or more parties perceively divergence of interest or incompatible goals or value. So it's subjective side processes of perception, cognition, communication, emotion. It also a behavior interaction between the parties. So multiples of level of analysis. For example, interpersonal, group interpersonal, organization, international, and also global. So conflict is defined as an actual or perceived oppositions of needs, value, and also interest. So a conflict can be internal, okay, within oneself, or external between two or more individuals. So conflict as a concept can help explain many aspects of society life, such as social disagreement, conflict of interest, fight between individuals, group, and also organization. So in political terms, conflict can refer to wars, revolutions, or other struggle, which may involve the use of force, as in the term armed conflict. Okay, so konflik ni benda-benda yang melibatkan needs lah, kehendak tak tercapai, values, you know, if you want to form a state, you cannot get that, you know, unstable government lead to the violence, you know. So it will build conflict, internal or external. Okay. Okay, conflict meaning, so it's a disagreement, a clash, agreement, and so quarrel. So it is a process in which one party perceives that its interests are being opposed or negatively affected by other party. So this is by the wall and also Callister, or a process that begin when one party perceive that another party has negatively affected or about to affect something that the first party care about. Okay. So how do we define violence? So the international use of physical forces or power to the threaten or actual, so against oneself, so another person or against a group or community, that either result in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, that psychological harm, maldevelopments, or privations. Okay, so this is violent. Violent ni the terrorism is a violent. So an act of violence towards the citizens. So we call it terrorism lah. Okay, what is the definition of war? So open and declare armed hostile conflict between state or state. So benda tu betul-betul war lah antara negara dengan negara. For if terrorism also can considered as war because dia adalah new threats. War on terrorism, for example, remember uh, being proposed by the American. So mana-mana state that sponsor terrorism, they will go and create war to them. Okay, any conflict between rivals, grouped by forces of armed or other means, so recognized as a legal conflict. And then act and of force to compel the enemy to do or will. This is close wish. Okay, types of war ada 4. So first is interstate war. So war between two or more states. In the past, these were the focus of most research, interstate war. Negara dengan negara. Okay, so they are the easiest to study and have causes the most damage. So interstate, French, American, you know, US, Vietnam. So interstate war. So intrastate war between groups within a state with or without international perception. So while the number of ongoing intrastate war has declined, the decline has been less perceptions than the decline in interstate war. Boleh tengok perang dingin kan. For example, Soviet, US Allied, NATO, Warsaw Pact. So itu yang dipanggil intrastate war. Total war, war involving multiple great powers. Okay, total war include significant destruction of laws. Since the end of World War II, total war have become less frequent. So the numbers of country participation in total war has fallen, and they tend to last for shorter length of time. This has led some to argue that this type of war is obsolete. So total war ni perang dunia lah, perang dunia pertama, kedua kan. So limited war, the objective is not surrender and occupation of enemy territory, but rather to enter limited goals. For example, the Korean War lah, Gulf War, Perang Teluk, and conflict in Sudan, Sierra Leone, for example, limited war lah, kejap-kejap je, limited. Okay. So conflicts and war. So international relation, conflict generally refer to armed conflict. War, when actor use force to resolve a dispute. Specialists in IR and political science have proposed various theories seeks to explanation causes of war in order to explain how some dispute become violence to others and others do not. Basically, when you talk about international conflict, it is about perception. So there are two schools of thought analyzing international conflict as usual, idealism and also realism. Example, as far as it is realist, talk about conflict all the time. Okay, but idealism always to talk how to resolve the conflict. So for example, John Locke or Thomas Hobbes, so it is a liberal perspective. They believe that international conflict can be resolved, and realism says cannot. So realism always says that war only can resolve the conflict, but liberalism, conflict can resolve by the table talk, ataupun dipanggil resolve conflict resolution or discussion. Also about international conflict. Okay, can it works? Each state pursue its own interest. However, define its ways to judge best was is a means of achieving the external end of state because there exist no consistent, reliable process of reconciling the conflict of interest that invariably rise among similar unit in a conditions of anarchy. Okay, so each state pursues, setiap negara ni ada, they have their own interest. So if they don't get their what they wanted to get, so they can create chaos lah in terms of system anarchy. So Kenneth Ward wrote in Man, State and War, buku dia. So ada 4 different levels lah. So individual levels, domestic, interstate and also global level. It could be ethnic, religion or anything that can relate unhappiness and also disagreement. Okay, in the state, why conflict turn to violence? So it revolves around rational issues. Okay, issue yang rational. And then first theory, so based on realism, the use of war and violent means of leverage in the international conflict is normal and rational decision made by leaders. Second theory, conflict occurs because of divisions from rationalists. Okay, for example, tak puas hati, and the needs that they don't get, And the third will be the education. The population determine whether conflict become violent or not. Higher education might lesser forces use of force. Second will be the domestic level. Okay, so intention individual ni lebih kepada orang tu lah. Macam orang tu dia ada interpersonal skill, the personal, they are realist people, so they feel that they wanted to go. Character dia going to war, right? For example, Hitler cannot negotiate, right? So memang itulah sebenarnya. Okay, attend to the features of state or society that make them more or less prone to violence in resolving conflict. For example, Marxism, the aggressive, greedy capitalist versus Western, expansionist, ideological and totalitarian nature of communist state. So domestic political factors shape the state outlook on war or peace. So political parties, intergroup and also legislative play important role. So some society change totally. For example, Japan, World War II used to be violent, but now peaceful. Uh, okay, this is interstate. Explain war in terms of power relation among IR actor. So current focusing on effect of democracy, government structure, trade, international organization, related factors explaining the escalations, settlement of militarized interstate dispute. So isu-isu yang berlaku antara negara, ini dia panggil interstate level. And the last will be the this is few state first. So kita akan tengoklah power transition theory. Hold that conflict generated massive war. So when power is relatively equal distributed and rising power is threatened to overtake a declining hegemony. So bila satu negara tu tak boleh less dominant macam sekarang lah, you just imagine lah, American become declining in terms of power, China become dominant, so it can create a non-harmonized situation. Okay, the second will be the deterrence lah. Supposed to stop war by building powers or and threatening its use. But theory of arms race shows this method is causing more wars and not preventing it. So deterrence, for example, after World War II, during the Cold War, banyak negara, most of the state develop nuclear weapon. So bila dia ada nuclear weapon, dia macam deterrence lah. So negara tak boleh nak serang, tak berani nak serang. For example, American, they just talk, they cannot, tak pernah serang pun Rusia, tak pernah serang pun Korea Utara, right? Because they know that Korea Utara, North Korea and also Russia has nuclear weapon. So itu yang dinamakan deterrence. Tak berani nak serang. Sebab apa? Kalau diserang takut kena nuclear weapon. Global level. So several theory propose long economic wave, for example, end of hegemony, US, maybe 50 years or 100 years, so coming soon, And then linear long-term change, war, conflict, laser, due to development, information, and also international norm. War become obsolete as leverage in international conflict. Two powerful weapon can't be used. Highly complex and also interdependent world. So dunia hari ini global level ni, kalau kita tengok, weapon cannot be used lah. Sebab apa? Sebab semua nuclear weapon tak ada pun lagi orang nak, negara wanted to use nuclear weapon to attack others. And then world right now they interdependent, bergantung, teori kebergantungan, dependency theory. So bergantung antara satu sama lain. So they need to depend on other state to survive. So that's why it's hard linear. So this is what we call linear long term change. Previously, war was seen as normal. Now it is distasteful. Just like slavery, dueling used to be a normal practice, but now it's obsolete. But in reality, there's still war, but shorter, and less frequent, but more destructive. War may be obsolete, but occurs with great frequencies. Okay, and causes of war, Kenneth's War. According to Kenneth's War, dari tiga, individual, state society, and also international system. Okay, individual, aggressive character lah, character leadership, misperception, kalau dia tu ganas, dia tu garang, so it can attributes lah to going to wars, communication failure. The second would be the state and also society, so radical, rebel state. So radical, for example, North Korea, it's a radical state, so dia macam create egotion, to create the aura of war. It can also happen war. Okay, domestic politics, escape, ego thing, group struggles for resources, ethnic issue, macam-macam lah. The last is system lah. International system is anarchy, select ability, power, institution, aggressive international capitalism, capitalist, class, and etc. Sistem antarabangsa ni anarki, siapa saja nak kuasa dunia, dia akan go in war. Right, that is according to Kenneth Walls. Okay, typology of international conflict. Conflict of idea. Okay, 6 type of international conflict: ethnic, religious, ideological, territorial, governmental, economic. So not every conflict are related with religion. Ada banyak lagi. Okay. Most difficult types of conflict have integrable elements such as ethnic hatred, religious favor, or ideological. All conflict of ideas. So this identity-based source of international conflict today have been shaped historically by nationalism, link between identity and also interstate. Kan? Interstate. Identity and internationally recognized statehood. Sorry, and just now I tak nampak yang bawah. Okay, so conflict of interest, tangible sources of conflict. So we can look at it. First is territorial dispute lah. Okay, means of controlling territory. Military means most effective. So secession is a province or region to succeed from existing state. For example, ni lah, issues of Aceh, Southern Thailand, South Philippines. So Iraq-Iran borders, spreadly issues, so Israel war, okay, territorial water airspace. This is all included to the territorial dispute. Second would be the conflict of who control the national government. Okay, for example, different government with different approaches. For example, US, Britain overrule Saddam. Economic conflict, mainly more persuasive form of conflict. For example, fuel. Okay, Middle East conflict, fuel, coffee. Okay, factors of mercantilism lah, foreign policy. So theory of lateral, for example, expansions of economy. For example, dulu kan 3G kan, gold, gospel, glory, right? So to develop, military industry to draft trafficking, massive illegal trade. So in Colombia, Colombia they have what? Dia ada kumpulan military yang kerja dia tangkap drug lord. So it also uh, uh, a huge conflict in the America Latin, sebab kat sana there raja-raja dadah ni dia tak duduk kat rumah, susah nak tangkap. Sebab dia apa? Dia beli kawasan, satu bandar tu dia punya. Dia beli bandar. So it's hard to they have military semua. Dia pun ada rebel dia. Kan FARC for example, right? FARC tu memang rebel lah, memang dominance in terms of cocaine. Al-Qaeda pun sama juga. Dia mendapat dia punya pembiayaan tu melalui dadah lah. Okay. Conflict of idea, integral source of conflict. Ethnic conflict, most difficult types of conflict. Systematic, dislike and hatred of one ethnic. For example, issue Hutu Tutsi, berlaku dekat Rwanda. Okay. Case on Rwanda. Okay, for example, ni Kurdish minority in Turkey, Iraq, this is what we call ethnic conflict lah. Causes of ethnic because of historical extent, Rohingya, tu ethnic conflict lah. So ethnocentrism in terms of group bias. Okay. Second will be religious, regarded as a core value of system, differ easily, disband, threat others as unworthy or even inhuman. So banyaklah religious conflict. For example, India, Pakistan, Armenians, Bosnian, distinction between believers and also versus infidels, and also we can put here Israel Palestine also can be considered as a religious conflict. So terrorist attack mostly being linked in terms of religious conflict. Okay, so religious conflict because religion is the core of a community value system in much of the world. People whose religious practice differ are easily discouraged and treated as unworthy or even inhuman. Okay, so it's a fundamentalist movement. For example, it's a secular political organization. Second is a Islamic movement, Islamic group. and also other religious. Ideological conflict mainly focus on ideology lah, idealism, communism, for example, Cold War, communism versus capitalism, demokrasi, US hegemony versus global governance, So ini yang berlaku lah. So ideological Nazi, Saddam Hussein ideology, for example, they toppled down after 9/11, So this is ideological conflict. Okay, this is type of conflict by Goldstein also, sama juga. So they have 6. Conflict of ideas, ada ethnic, religious, ideological, conflict of interest, territorial, governmental, economic. So pecah 3 senang. These causes can often overlap. Okay, ethnic also can often overlap to the economic ataupun territorial kan. So it is kata more or less, but being divided by this, it can easier more to get understand. Okay, so 6 type of international conflict: ethnic, religious, ideological, territorial, government, and also economic. So ada 3 lah, idea and also interest. So most difficult type of conflict have integrable elements such as ethnic hatred, religious feeling, or ideological. So all conflict of idea. So this identity-based source of international conflict today have been shaped historically by nationalism, link between identity and also internationally recognized statehood. Okay, what do you think is the most important reason for international conflict among nations today? Banyaklah kan. So here are the 3 main causes of international conflict today. Competition over the resources, because now resources become more limited. Okay, for example, oil, coal, okay, water. And then second, territorial dispute. This is very important. Issues in Spratly, issues in Armenia, issues in Caspian Sea, Third will be the different ideological. Okay, means of leverage. A conflict settled in explicit or implicit ways. So acceptable does not mean that both parties are happy or fair. So war, violent action taken in international conflict aim favorable terms. So inflicting violence as a negative leverage. So state often have alternative means on leverage better than war. Okay, so how to resolve the dispute? So a lot of things can be done to reform rather than going war. War is the last resort lah. Okay. So we have, for example, nowadays we have United Nations that focusing aim to conflict resolution. Okay, so in a concept of conflict resolution, so they need to promote peace, promote relations and measure for development, practicing tolerance and life in harmonies, and avoid war. If we can, we should avoid war without not having war to settle the resolution. That's the better settlement. Okay, how to resolve conflict? So ada 2 lah. Satu war, satu peaceful settlement dispute. Okay, ataupun bargaining power, you can use diplomacy, you can use, So peaceful settlement by the United Nations. Okay, there are principle of peaceful settlement by the UN. So in Article 1, kurungan 1. So one of the major objective of United Nations is described in Article 1 of the Charter as being to bring about any peaceful means and in conformity with the principle of justice and international law, judgment or settlement of international dispute, or situations which might lead to a breach of the peace. So in Article 33, United Chartered, so have several method of peaceful settlement. So six method, which is the first would be the negotiation lah. So negotiation, we nego. The second would be good office. We give advice to them. Okay, the third would be the bargaining. Okay, we try to bargain to get this issue solution. Fourth will be the inquiry. Uh, the five consolidation, and the last will be the arbitration law lah. Okay, so conflict resolution can be resolved through diplomacy. So conflict that cannot be resolved through peaceful means may lead to war. So this conflict may impact surrounding country in the region at the time, even the world. Okay, so that's all for today for the session, and then next week we're going to continue for other session. So thanks for your time and have a nice day. Inshallah, we'll might meet. We will meet soon. Okay. So that's all for today. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum.